Folks, I swear to you that somebody requested this build. I don't know who, but I totally did not hallucinate and do an entire build for a character I don't even know on the assumption that somebody asked for it. Therefore, for the totally real person that requested this build, I hope you appreciate my take on the Primal Beast from Defense of the Ancients 2. Before we get into it, I hope you'll toss me a quick like and maybe subscribe if you like what you see. For this feral fellow, we have a simple but fun creature, here, so let's start by looking at some build goals for him. The Primal Beast was hatched into a world of violent terrors that he became the apex predator of, before his masters banished him to another dimension. He was forced into a long sleep there, but has recently awoken with little desire beyond destruction. To that end, he is a durable and disruptive melee monster, whose colossal passive causes him to deal more damage to buildings and structures. Onslaught is a powerful charge that knocks back enemies, damaging and stunning them on impact. Trample also involves movement, causing the Primal Beast to deal damage to creatures that he walks by or over. Uproar includes a passive and active effect. The former gives him more damage and lets him accumulate stacks for this ability as he takes damage, which in turn grants him extra damage and armor whenever he activates it, which also slows down enemies. Rock Throw launches a boulder in the area that stuns and, again, damages foes. He rounds out his abilities with Pulverize, which sees him grab an enemy, locking them down and slamming them repeatedly into the ground with enough force that nearby enemies are also impacted. This makes for a basic but burly beast, more at home fighting with its hands rather than any man-made weapons. If he does use a weapon, it'll be a boulder, or another enemy. He can fly into a frenzy and unleash powerful charges that shake the very earth. We take a step away from the human ancestry here to instead take up the lizardfolk ancestry to represent our primal beast. He's a pretty saurian smasher, so he selects the Bakua heritage, which makes his hide and scale so sturdy that they can serve as armor. Lizardfolk naturally possess claws and aquatic adaptation, though that doesn't really suit PB here. Going unarmed, he takes the Iruxi Armament's feat to upgrade the claws he automatically gained as a lizardfolk, since these will cover his basic attacks. As a lizardfolk, he's getting a boost to strength and wisdom, takes a free boost to constitution, but then has a flaw to intelligence. The Primal Beast is exactly what he says on the tin, a beast. We cover this with the feral child background, which makes him trained in nature and survival and provides him with the forager skill feat. He's going to need all that food to feed a beast of his bulk, but he also gains low light vision and imprecise scent. There's only one ability boost here, which will be applied to his strength. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. Beastie here is a barbarian with a boost to strength. It's quite possibly the easiest pick I've had in a while, though there is something to be said for going monk and possibly going into kaiju style. However, given the feral ferocity of this fearsome fellow, he'll use the animal instinct and, following his saurian design, the Tyrannosaurus animal specifically.
Extreme dinosaurs!
This adds a jaws and tail strike to his arsenal once he starts raging, which he can do a bit faster in the remaster thanks to Quick Tempered. Rage already kind of represents his uproar, but I want to go into Raging Intimidation to build on another idea for it down the line. For now, it'll let him demoralize while raging, and might net him a few skill feats automatically, such as Intimidating Glare once he becomes trained in Intimidation. As a barbarian, he's already trained in athletics, but also becomes trained in acrobatics, the aforementioned intimidation, and then stealth, because I wasn't sure what other way to go with him. He takes 4 free boosts to strength, dexterity, intelligence, and charisma. And honestly, you could probably skip the int boost to boost his constitution instead, if that's the way you want to go. I just don't like looking at negatives in my ability scores, but it might be appropriate here for the character. For this build, we'll take a step back from archetyping to instead take Sudden Charge. PB has a couple of abilities about stomping and rampaging about, so this is at least based on those. He also has Quick Jump, just to spring upon prey. He got Intimidating Glare with his Intimidation increase, so this is more about being an apex predator to descend on victims and then savage them. At 3rd level, Barbarians gain Furious Footfalls to increase their speed, and PB then goes even further beyond with Fleet, meaning that our Primal Beast will have 40 feet of movement speed while raging. This level also features a skill increase to Athletics, making him an expert in it. I know Rock Throw is kind of an optional ability, but Oversized Throw is too good an option to pass up, and it fits oh so perfectly as his 4th level class feat. It's followed by Powerful Leap, extending the range of the beast's bounds so that it can erupt onto the scene, ready to rock and rumble. This physical powerhouse takes ability boosts at 5th level to Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma. As a barbarian, he gains Brutality to increase his weapon proficiency, and give him critical specializations while he's raging. Naturally, he increases Intimidation this time, and then he grabs Gecko's Grip as his ancestry feat. This nets him Combat Climber and turns his successes into critical successes, just based on him being an apex predator able to hunt in any environs. With Barreling Charge at 6th level, the Primal Beast can stomp over enemies with his Athletics, resembling his Trample, though the damage comes from a strike rather than just stomping around. That'll have to come later. We finally take an Intimidation skill feat here though, with Terrifying Resistance. This is a little bit inspired by Uproar, which activates to increase the beast's armor, just as this will enhance his defenses, though not necessarily his AC. 7th level comes with a range of features, starting with Juggernaut enhancing his fort saves, then Weapon Specialization bumping up his numbers, and finally his Animal Instinct Specialization ability. This increases the damage dice of his unarmed attacks and increases his rage damage. So, GMs watching this, be ready for a big spike coming from your barbarian players at this point. The beast also becomes a master in athletics, and then gains toughness as his general feat, and making him much harder in general to put down, as the durable disaster he's designed to be. This build starts working towards Pulverize with Thrash. The beast needs prey in hand to make use of this, after which he can swing them into the ground for some relatively minor flat damage. However, the nice thing about this is that it isn't an attack, and it's a basic save, so even on a success, enemies will take some damage. Helping in that effort is Titan Wrestler, letting PB tangle with towering targets to trounce them terrifically. As a note, we are looking at eventually enhancing the beast's size, so maybe this is something you'll want to eventually retrain, but I will leave that, as I sometimes do, up to you. We have a nice selection of class features again at 9th level, with Reflex Expertise, Raging Resistance to piercing and slashing damage, and then an increase to Intimidation, making him a master of it. His ancestry feat is Hone Claws, building out of Iruxi armaments and letting him spend an action to add some bleed damage to his claws. It doesn't represent anything, I just think it's cool. There's another array of ability boosts at 10th level, which will go to Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma. This increase to Strength comes in handy with the overpowering charge feat that he gains here. This builds out of Barreling Charge, and allows him to deal damage to creatures that he barrels over, and might even let him leave the enemy off guard for the strike that follows up his stride. He takes Battle Cry for his skill feat, taking advantage of his recent Intimidation increase and letting him begin battle with a bullying bellow to make prey more vulnerable. For 11th level, the beast gains Mighty Rage, increasing his class DC and adding even more damage on his first strike after using Quick Tempered. A skill increase makes him an expert in survival, as I want to lean into a little bit of the idea of him being an apex predator with it. He goes tanky with Die Hard as his general feat, making him even harder to finally kill since nobody ever did with the setting that he hails from. Uproar affects enemies in an area, which leads to Terrifying Howl as the beast's 12th level class feat. This just lets him demoralize in an area, debuffing entire groups, though I do wish this was defined as something other than a demoralize. It means you might have to choose between Battle Cry or using this. While this should be used against groups, the beast can accompany it with Terrified Retreat. This can send foes fleeing, eating up their actions just as Uproar inflicts a slow on enemies in an area. Barbarians become legendary in Fortitude as early as 13th level, while also gaining medium armor expertise and weapon mastery. PB takes his skill increase in survival again to become a master of it. As for his ancestry feat, what's better for the Primal Beast than Primal Rampage? A very cool little feat that grants the beast castings of Unfettered Movement and Mountain Resilience, which he can combine into 3 actions. Of particular note here is that Mountain Resilience provides damage reduction, which resembles the armor boost from Uproar. Fury's Bully is a fantastic fit, giving him a bonus on athletics attack actions so that he's better, specifically, at grappling, though he can also use it for things such as trips, shoves, and repositions. For his skill feat, he grabs Planar Survival, since the beast does originally hail from a different, even more hostile dimension than the one he exists in now. He begins 15th level with ability boost to Strength, Constitution, Intelligence, and Wisdom. Again, Intelligence doesn't quite fit him, but I'm trying to make sure that we don't have any wasted ability boosts. That Intelligence increase could make him trained in Thievery or anything else that you like, because I don't have anything particular in mind. His actual skill increase makes him a legend in Athletics, which is much more important to the build. The beast gains Indomitable Will here, as well as greater weapon specialization for yet more damage, because he obviously needs it. He sticks with fast recovery as his general feat, simply making him a burlier and more resilient beast able to easily fight off diseases and poisons. We finally pick up Collateral Thrash at 16th level, which allows PB to damage other nearby creatures when he thrashes, just like Pulverize hits in an area. Further helping him pounce on prey is Cloud Jump, letting our beauteous beast bound into battle over incredible distances, jumping a potential 120 feet while raging as a single action. Going into 17th level, there's Perception Mastery and Revitalizing Rage so that he can gain temporary HP from Rage much faster. An increase in Intimidation leads to him gaining Scare to Death, but perhaps even more important than that is Scion Transformation. This makes him permanently large and increases his maximum hit points, making this monster the mass it's meant to be. Will take up Shattering Blows at 18th level, which allows him to ignore some hardness of objects just as his passive lets him deal more damage to structures. Then, in a case of serious oversight on my part, he finally takes Intimidating Prowess so that he gets a greater boost on intimidation checks. I could have taken this way sooner, but I do like the skill feats that we've taken thus far, and didn't want to really switch them up. For 19th level, the beast gains Armor Mastery and Devastator. Increasing his class DC, and letting his melee strikes punch through the resistance of enemies. He sticks with Survival for his skill increase, becoming a legend in it, and then grabs Robust Health as his general feat. This just matches with the tanky sort of general feats that we've been looking for when it came to putting together the beast. Rounding out the recipe for this rowdy rampager are ability boosts to Strength, Dexterity, Wisdom, and Charisma. The beast can unleash a Quaking Stomp once every 10 minutes, letting him create the effects of Earthquake.
Saurian Storm! Let's fossilize him!
This is meant to further resemble the likes of Trample, but he could also go for Unstoppable Juggernaut, and that would fit his character just as well. He ends the basics of this build with Legendary Survivalist, a skill feat that allows him to survive indefinitely with no worry for food, water, or extreme conditions, just letting him be a monster from beyond the known world. Bringing this beast into a free archetype game, the Monk dedication comes up as an option with picks such as Kaiju Stance or Crush and Grab, though you could also go into a Wrestler dedication for the latter of those, and you get some nice options in there, letting our beast better pummel enemies. Going the Wrestler route could even lead to Godbreaker, which is just a cool feat. You might also consider Wild Mimic, simply based on the savagery of our creature here and its role at the top of the food chain. Of particular note, Primal Proportions is a great feat to pick up before he eventually gets into his Scion transformation. However, with all that said, that is our mighty monster made. Of course, we're going to have to review what all we've made for our beastie boy here, so let's get to it. The Primal Beast is a Bakuwa lizardfolk barbarian, with a Tyrannosaurus animal instinct and a background as a feral child, which represents his rearing in the wild world he was hatched into. We have built a true apex predator by 20th level, whose use of athletics and intimidation allows him to disrupt and disable his enemies. He covers his colossal passive through Shattering Blows, allowing him to ignore a portion of hardness and thus deal more damage to objects and structures. He has Sudden Charge and Barreling Charge for the general charge of Onslaught, though he can also just shove creatures around and follow after them as another way to represent it. Barreling Charge also helps to cover Trample, which is expanded upon with Overpowering Charge and even Quaking Stomp. The passive of Uproar can actually just come from the likes of his rage, increasing his damage, whereas the active comes through in a couple different ways. Terrifying Howl and Terrified Retreat can combo to send foes fleeing, disrupting their action economy and effectively slowing them. However, the increased armor comes from Primal Rampage, which provides him with mountain resilience to gain resistance against physical damage. We also managed to work in Rock Throw through Oversized Throw, simply letting him heave great big objects at enemies. We close out our design with Thrash and then Collateral Thrash to recreate his Pulverize, capturing an enemy and then using that enemy to beat another enemy. This behemoth of a beast bashes and batters baddies with boisterous brutality, its bellows breaking the bravado of belligerents. Even its Borborygmus burbling is bound to banish bandits, backbiters, and betrayers. Dota characters often look like a hassle to build, but I am pretty happy with this one. Let me know what you think of it, and what other sorts of builds you'd like to see in a comment. You can check out item suggestions and character sheets for this build, and other builds I've done, over on the Monster Monday blog, which is linked below along with a Twitter and Discord. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic Friday.